We have a visitor in the background. He's singing.
And welcome to today's segment of The Power of Money with Michelle Graves, and I'm your host, Michelle Graves. This show has been broadcast for over 10 years now, out of DATV in Dayton, Ohio. Wonderful people, professional, thorough, complete, and we distribute currently into a number of markets, including New York City, Philadelphia, and Durham, North Carolina, along with others. If you'd like to see back episodes, don't hesitate to go to YouTube. We've uploaded episodes, again, going back many, many years, covering all kinds of topics that you and your family will find of interest. Just remember, my commitment then is the same as today, which is to bring you information, resources, and down-to-earth subject matter to empower you and your family during these very difficult times to prosper. That is my passion, and that is my goal. Today's show is no exception. This is a continuation of my interview with April Ballentine, who is a domestic violence survivor. This is a part of a series of shows I am doing on domestic violence. We talked about the history. We talked about why it occurs. I told you on my own personal testimony that I was a victim of this horrible, horrible thing that traumatized me and wound up with a plate in my face, exactly, because the person, my husband at that time, was crazy. And so we're dealing with this in front interview with April because she too was a victim of domestic violence. So off the chart that she suffered point blank 5 bullets to her torso, which left her paralyzed. She had another bullet which she was able to swipe away for her face. I guess the intent was to disfigure her because she's a very, very lovely woman. But we're going to continue that interview for those of you who've not seen the part 1. Again, if it has not broadcast in your local markets, and we're everywhere, then don't hesitate to go into YouTube, The Power of Money with Michelle Graves, and look under domestic violence. You're going to see a number of shows, but you're also going to catch that very first interview that was incredibly powerful and totally transparent, because that's what we need today. So we're going to continue on that same venue, and I'm going to continue my interview with this powerful, powerful, remarkable woman and her story. And what is the goal here? Viewers, the goal is to make sure first you know the severity of the problem. Domestic violence impacts millions of people all over the world, and it must stop. We can stop everything else. We can't stop this. Oh, come on. Don't play with me. Yes, we can if there is the will. So we bring these so that you are now aware, and you will look carefully at your own situation and others if it pertains to them. But we want to look at it and we want to get help. So no further ado, I'm going to go right into the interview, and I thank you so much for being a part of my world as we look at breaking the silence, the truth about domestic violence. April, how are you this morning?
I'm doing wonderful. Good morning, Michelle, and everyone else.
I'm just profoundly humbled that you would continue to talk about this subject to my viewers, to hopefully give them the necessary insights so that they can begin to recognize and even address what is going on today. What is your goal for being here? What do you want?
What is my goal for being here is to show others that they can have a voice. Because I think in so many different situations, there are individuals that do not speak upon their experience in domestic violence. And I totally understand that. But providing a safe and vulnerable environment for other victims is truly important. And learning and teaching as far as how to receive help or how to ask for help. And also to see the other side as far as surviving being a victim of domestic violence. So I think that's my biggest goal, because I would say the challenge is getting your life back, attaining who you are, so that way you have the ability to live a normal life and not live in fear.
I would have to say, from where I sit, the biggest challenge that I encountered was fear. There's no way you can experience domestic violence and not be traumatized. Would you like to speak on that?
Yes, I don't believe that you recognize your true trauma until you continue to live life and you experience different events, and it allows you to see your reaction, and then you try to process, where is this reaction coming from and why am I reacting that way? But that is part of the trauma, the initial trauma experience that carries on throughout your life. And those, I would say, that experience, which you and I have talked about, requires therapy for you to be able to process through it and live a normal life and not allow different events to trigger a reoccurrence of trauma.
I think I absolutely would insist that therapy, professional, not church, not family, not friends, but people that are trained to recognize the symptoms and to begin to help you to heal. Because as I shared with you, I believe that domestic violence, whether it is physical in your case, or whether it is mental abuse, which is cursing and maligning the person, or emotional abuse, which is withholding, penalizing the other person. It's like shattering the soul into a million broken pieces of glass. It's painful, and that glass, even a tiny bit of that glass, can cause pain. That's the vicious character of glass. It can get embedded, and it hurts, until it is completely removed. Can't be healed. It has to be removed. Are you sensing that as well in your situation?
Absolutely. I will say that I have not had any therapy throughout this process. And I will say here recently, I have noticed different behaviors with my reactions from my trauma that I was not fully aware of. Because in my thought, I figured I was healing myself by training and exercising and helping others and being an advocate for victims. But what I was actually doing was re-traumatizing myself and going through it over and over and over and over, to where if I experience a situation with someone, and it could be something very minute, to where it causes me to retract from my fear. But just unconsciously not realizing what was going on. So it takes a lot of self-love and self um, preservation to be able to recognize those behaviors and realize, maybe I do need some help. Maybe I do need some therapy to, be able to process this and move forward from it.
Well, I think that you are certainly, by your willingness to share, and I'm going to ask you to repeat because many people aren't aware of the previous
Hmm.
show, and we're going to move forward from that. But I can't emphasize enough, I had to go through therapy, and I was not a young woman when I realized that there was a pattern in my behavior that was consistent and repetitive in terms of who you attract, because you're going to attract the pain that is inside of you. It's a fact. You are. Psychiatrists will tell you that. That becomes you. And until there is an actualization and a realization, then you will just repeat and repeat and repeat. And we know that this thing is so pathological. There's so many people that are in this right now. We know the data. Nobody's talking, but you're surrounded by people that are broken and brokenhearted, and their souls are oozing sorrow and suffering. So would you mind just summarily going back to those events, and then we're going to take it forward because this jerk didn't let it go. So let's go back to when it happened, what happened to you, and let's bring it forward. Is that okay?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Let's go back to the night I was actually shot. Is that
Ah,
okay? If
yes,
we go
go
back
back,
there?
do whatever.
Okay. Because I want to be able to move forward and get to, closer to the end of, well, there's no end
There
in
is
this
no end.
journey, but
No.
but I'd like to get to today. Um, so that evening, it was actually early evening. I was in a local establishment with some friends, and he actually came in. We probably sat around maybe an hour. This was like 6 o'clock in the evening. And little did I know, well, actually, he wasn't supposed to be in there if I was in there, or if I was in there, they would not allow him to come in. And that was because of the original emergency protection order um, and the situation of events that had occurred. So I was actually sitting in one area and he was actually sitting behind me. We weren't communicating or anything like that. I didn't feel any kind of threat or anything. But little did I know, he was facing a mirror that he was watching me the entire time. And so when I got up to go to the other side of the building, he proceeded to follow because he thought I was going to exit the building at the time because I was going towards the door. And as my back was turned, he came up behind me and grabbed my arm, turned me around, and said, "Hey, let's go outside and talk." And I said, "No, I have nothing to talk about. We're over. This is done." And that's when he pulled up his shirt. And when he raised his shirt, I saw a gun in his pants. And I immediately blacked out when I saw the gun. Um, this case actually went to trial, and the entire evening was recorded on video.
Mm.
So, considering that my memory went blank and I still don't have a recollection of what occurred, once I saw the gun, I was able to watch the video. And as we stated, the first shot was towards my face, where I was able to knock the gun away and it went off behind my head in the wall. And I ran to take a step to get away from him, and that's when I fell on the floor and he stood over me and shot me 5 times. And I know we had talked about my level of injury, which is T3, T4, and that level of injury is actually from my best breastbone down. So it's higher than my waist.
Mm.
And I was actually told that I would never be able to live alone. I would need someone to care for me. And honestly, I'm not supposed to have use of my arms, but I have full use of my arms. Injury level is still high. However, I'm fully independent and live alone.
How does that feel to have no recollection of someone trying to take your life? Do you think that your inability to recollect was a safety measure to keep you from actively defending yourself? I mean, have you thought about why you blanked out?
So I believe, of course, your body goes into a protective state when you're being attacked. But I
Mm-hmm.
think there was a higher power that kept me in that protective state and kept me mentally safe so that I could move forward through. Um, because I don't know how I would be mentally and emotionally today if I was able to feel the bullet, let alone hear the gun go off.
Mm.
Um,
Oof.
because I can talk about it today and not have an emotional breakdown about it. If even when I watched the video, it didn't affect me.
Mm.
Um, don't know how it didn't affect me, but I'm grateful that I can talk about it and have a voice in it because I think God is using me and my story to show others that you can overcome, you can move through, and you can get your life back.
I think that is absolutely an accurate assessment of your circumstance. I know that to an individual who has never experienced what you've experienced or anything similar, it's got to be, it's just got to be off the chart because it's hard for many people that are, quote, normal. And I say this because clearly he wasn't. He
Correct.
was mentally ill. But
Correct.
April, the numbers of people today that are literally brain dead, don't have the capacity to function on a normal level, is off the chart.
Yes.
Were there any? I know we talked in the last show about his behavior, and I must say that I did not know that you had gone forward and had a protection order to protect you from him. How did he behave behind that? Because I know for myself, trying to get a protection order is like trying to pull a nail out of a piece of wood. What was your experience with the protection order?
So, with the protection order, there was an event that actually occurred that caused me to get the protection order. And there is a difference. There's a DVO, which is um, a domestic violence order. And then there's the EPO, which is the emergency protection order. The emergency protection order comes into place initially so that something is put into place to provide protection for an individual until there's a court date and you decide whether you want to continue to a DVO or dismiss the emergency protection order. So the event that actually occurred was that it was the evening of his birthday, and we ended up going to his brother's home. And at that point, I recall back on the last episode, I think we were finishing, and he had called me out of my name. And I had told you all that when I told him that when he calls me out of my name again, I was done. And that was my outlet. That was my way
Mm-hmm.
out. That was my ticket to end this relationship. I know it sounds weak and I know it sounds ridiculous, But that was the only thing that I had that was powerful enough with him for me to get out. So that night at his brother's house, we were arguing, trying to explain what happened that evening. And he said, well, I know what she wants. I'm going to give it to her. And he took the keys, and this was the keys to the house, and he threw them on his brother's couch. So I went to pick up the keys, and I said, okay. I said, I'm leaving. And he, at that point, said, okay, yeah, let's go home. And I said, no, I meant what I said. I said, when you call me out of my name again, I was done. So
Mm-hmm.
I proceeded to walk towards the door. And when I opened the door, I blacked out because I found myself in the grass and he was kicking me in my back, pulling my hair, and I'm screaming, call 911, call 911. I didn't know what was going on. I had never been attacked or hit by a man with that type of force. And so his brother came out and he was able to pull him aside somewhat. He wasn't able to really hold him as well because he's pretty strong. He was a big guy. And his brother's wife came out and said, April, get in the car, get in the car. I got in the car and we locked the doors and he started beating on the windshield. And when he was beating on the windshield cracked. And we were able to pull off and we went to a main road and she's a nurse. So she wanted to check me out and make sure that I was okay because of course I was in shock and everything was fine. But it was just, it was so traumatizing that I couldn't process what had just occurred. But I knew at that point he was going to be out of my house. And to be able to move forward in this, he called me as we came back to the home after she checked me out. And he said, I just want to come home. Can I go sleep in the basement? And he didn't even recognize his behavior and what had happened. He didn't acknowledge it. And he said, oh, I didn't do anything. We're just going through something and I just want to go home and go to sleep. I'll go sleep in the basement. And I'm like, you've got to be crazy. I said, you will never, ever come back in my home again. So during this call, he hung up and he would call back. He'd hang up and he'd call back. So finally, he called and he said, well, I'm on this road and I'm headed to the house. And all I could think of was my daughter because she was home alone. So I immediately called her and I said, please go into the garage and disable the garage door opener. There's a red string, pull it. And that way, if anyone comes and tries to open it, it will not open. The other thing I need you to do is make sure all the doors are locked. Do not let anyone in unless it's me or the police. She didn't ask any questions. She just did it. And at that point, I got off the phone and I called 911. And I'm trying to get to my house because he was closer to the house than I was.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm in the car riding, actually I was driving. As I'm in the car, I'm on the phone with the police department advising, hey, this is what I'm driving, this is what occurred, this is where I'm headed, and this is the situation. Next thing I knew, the dispatchers advised, hey, are you driving this car and is this your license plate? And I said, yes, and yes. And she asked my location and I said, yes. And she said, well, there's a policeman behind you and there's one in front of you. They will escort you to your home. But if he is there, do not, go close. Let them proceed ahead of you. One will come around the backside entrance. The other one will go ahead of you. And I said, okay. So sure enough, I get to my street and his car is parked in the driveway. So my only thought is my daughter. Is he in the house? Is he in the house? Is he in the house? Fortunately, he was not. He was not able to get in. Not sure if he actually went to the door or not. But the police had come around the side entrance because my street was a U shape. So
Okay.
that one went in one way, the other went in around me, and I just paused about four houses away because I didn't want to be that close. And they summoned him out of the vehicle and immediately put him in cuffs, and he went to jail that night. And that was a Tuesday. That Friday he got out, but I had talked to his brother, and I told him, I said, um, I will have all of his belongings outside of the house on Friday. Whatever you don't take will go to garbage.
I find this, first thing I want to comment on a couple of things as you spoke. I want to applaud the Lexington, Kentucky police and the
Absolutely.
fact that they protected you from the potential violence that would be coming forth. I will say to you, I wish I could say that was my experience, because my experience, again, that's a long time ago, but there was no support whatsoever of my plight or situation, and certainly no effort on their part to apprehend him at all. In fact, they told me, you need to get it together and do something about your husband. And I was like, what? And then I blanked out. And of course, I was rushed to the hospital and all of the above. But I think that those police officers need to be commended. And I will also say publicly, for those of you police officers and sheriff officials that encounter these, we know it's a violent and difficult position you are in. And we thank you. I know April does. I'm saying
Absolutely.
I thank you, because it can escalate into something that is pretty bad. And I know from the different articles I've read, including one recently, where a policeman and his partner were killed and another third party were killed trying to deal with this situation. And literally, their wives are now widows. And that's a lot when you think about this guy doing this type of thing. What are your thoughts? Because that's very unusual, April.
Yes, I tell you, I heard about that. I believe it was two police officer
Yeah,
and a fireman
yes,
that were killed when they were dealing with a domestic violence situation.
just
It's
happened.
it's very unfortunate. I tell you, if you've never been in a domestic violence situation,
Okay.
um, you cannot place judgment on that individual if they haven't left or whatever it was they were facing, because you have no idea. You have no idea. And when you are in that situation, you fear um, your own safety, you fear your family's safety, you feel your friends' safety, because Michelle, you know just as well as I do, if you tell someone close to you and then first thing they want to do is, well, we're going to go talk to him. Uh-uh,
Oh, oh
uh-uh.
no.
Because
Cray,
you live
cray.
with that person, they don't. You're the
Right.
one that has to go home. And I think the biggest thing, and I will tell you for me in that situation, was not knowing how to leave,
God.
not knowing how to plan to get away. And I didn't know my resources. I didn't know my outlets. I didn't know the help that was there to provide that assistance. Um, so if you are in that situation and you check with your local authorities, you check with the police department, you check with the sheriff's department, you check with the different advocates that are there to assist, because you can put a plan together to get out. You just have to be prepared mentally to leave whatever you have to leave behind.
Well, if I can say anything, because I was working on my PhD in economics and finance, as well as working 2 jobs, as well as taking care of an infant. And I will tell you, the fear was the greatest obstacle I faced. I knew that this had an end. And viewers, it typically does. Women are getting killed. There is an
Yeah.
end. And I was terrified of my end. I did not know in a strange city what was before me. And I will tell you, I just, I don't even know when I look back, and of course he is gone, deceased, wherever he's at, I don't care. But my point is that most people have no idea what it is like to be in prison in your own
Oh,
home.
yeah.
Was that your experience?
Yes, because that imprisonment isn't just in your home, it is wherever you are,
Oh,
be it at work, be it in public, be it in your vehicle, whatever it is, because you never know the extent that they will go to, I will say, attempt to control you as a person and your actions. Um, be
it's
I, I
okay.
know
It's
I know
okay.
before I talked about a pen and I talked about an audio recorder in the home, there was also a tracker in my vehicle. And my tracker was actually my phone. He was able to tap into my phone
Mm.
to recognize and know of my whereabouts at all times. And how I was able to find that out, I came home one evening and he was asleep because, like I advised before, he worked nights. So when I came home, he was sleeping, and I went to the side of the bed, and I noticed on the nightstand, I looked at this piece of paper, and I was like, "Huh." I said, "That looks like that's my mom's street." And then I'm like, "Well, that's the street that I work on." And then I said, "Well, that's the street I take to get to work." So he was actually tracking and logging my stops to
Mm.
see where I was. And I'm sure he was looking up the address and everything to see, exactly what it was.
Well, I don't want to deviate, but that tracker is mainstream now. And people are tracking other people. I don't
Correct.
have that type of a capacity, nor am I interested in tracking anybody. But I
Hmm.
do know with the advent of that technology, my antenna went up because I thought about all of the control freaks that are out here that are now able to track that other person's comings and goings. And which to
Correct.
me was like, are you just crazy? But the
Hmm.
reality is, yes, you are. And so I would like to know, just as a query, viewers, how do you stop that? Do you disable their app or do you block them? How do you do this? Because that is horrible. The impact for
It,
domestic violence is serious. The fact that you now can track a person, they really can't
hmm
get away from you. What are your
Correct.
thoughts?
So I think this is great because this piece is educational for all. It's very important whenever you have an electronic device to find out from the provider, what can I do to block any type of tracking system through my electronic device. Um, First and foremost, I would advise to not give anyone your password to your phone. Now, if in the event someone else is paying for that phone, then they have access.
Right.
to that information. Okay. But what I would do is say, even if you have a password on your phone, create a password with that provider so that no one can get that access without providing you a passcode that you've created to protect your information. Because if you allow someone access to, be it your iCloud or something like that, then they can actually log in to access your tracking location, um, to be able to know, your whereabouts. And you
Oof.
can also turn off your GPS on your phone. Um, so there's a lot of different things, but if you don't know to ask, or if you don't think about asking, those things are wide open on your phone.
I think that what you're sharing with the technology is so important because that the whole modus operandi of a killer, a domestic violence person who's doing it, the perpetrator, is to control. And
Yeah,
they control by tracking, by violating boundaries, by mental and emotional abuse, and then
correct.
finally by physical. If you still can't figure it out, they're going to begin to intensify their behavior. So I think the tracking is excellent, excellent, excellent information. I don't even think people should be allowed to track you, period. What do they
Hmm.
care? And if they
Right.
do, get a life. Okay, get
Correct.
get a life. But in your situation, he was tracking you. So was he
Absolutely.
happy? Because you weren't involved with anybody. So was he relieved or he didn't care? It was just business as usual.
So the interesting thing about a narcissist is that you are never, regardless of how innocent you are, they don't see you as being innocent at all. Any type of involvement with the other sex, um, creates accusations, period.
Mm.
Creates accusations. I would say whenever we were in a public place, he would always walk behind me. And his purpose in walking behind me was to watch who was watching me. And then he would accuse me of having relations with that person.
So there is no win in that type of behavior. If they
Not
have
at all.
already predetermined that you are just out here, then you can't
Hmm.
win anyway.
Not at all.
I mean, classic narcissist, really,
Yes,
in
very much
every
so.
way. I mean, you are experienced. So, anyway, you get this protection order.
Yes,
The police are aware, they know what's going on.
correct.
And did you talk to your daughter about this?
You know, I will tell you, interesting enough, I don't recall.
Okay, I accept that.
I don't recall because being a victim, you block a lot of things out.
Yeah, to keep it
And
from going
and you
crazy.
put them over on the shelf and you leave them there
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want them to come back. So, did I talk to my daughter? I don't believe that I did. Did I talk to my family? I don't believe that I did.
Mm-hmm.
The things that I'm telling you, they haven't heard this.
Whoa.
They haven't heard
Ooh,
this.
well, we must make sure that they understand because families can function in the positive or the negative. They,
Negative. Correct.
they can say, we don't talk about those things. God will
Hmm.
work it out. Um,
Hmm.
you need to be careful because of family reputation. All of the excuses that come from families that are trying to close ranks and protect themselves. I'm not so sure they're interested in protecting you. although they may feel that silence is a protector. But silence is not a protector at all.
No, it's
The
not.
families, many families are toxic. They got abused in their own families. And what happens, these males see their fathers doing this and they emulate the behavior, which is why I tell women, you better know about their family. In our community, which was small at that time, we did know that people were alcoholics and beat up their wives.
Yes.
I mean, we remember this stuff. But in the
Right.
big city, like Lexington is not a small city. It's not. Cincinnati isn't, Dayton isn't, all these bigger, you don't know people's families. And you don't know
Right.
where they came from. You don't know what their DNA is like. You know, was
Correct.
their hair trigger behavior from their daddy or their granddaddy, where he was thumping their mother or their grandmother?
Right.
These are some very deep things. They are.
Yes.
So, was there abuse that you know of in his family?
I don't know.
Huh.
I will say that I know that his mother passed away when he was young, um, and I would say under the age of 15, and he was raised by his brother and sister. Um, so I really don't know the backlog,
Mm-hmm.
the history on his family situation, and their behaviors. I knew of his brother prior to this, and actually when I was a lot younger. But we were both active in sports, and that's where I knew of him
Mm-hmm.
from. But nothing behavioral wise. So,
Okay.
that wasn't an issue. However, when I met my perpetrator, I didn't even know that they were brothers.
Oh, wow.
I
Now
didn't even
that,
know that they were
two different
related. Yes,
personalities or two different,
correct.
okay, physical features similar.
Somewhat similar, but different.
Because the thing
Um,
that kind of comes to my mind, first, she died when he was young, and that the death itself may have triggered some things. Everybody responds to grief differently. The other thing is
mhm,
what the home environment was like that
correct.
caused her to leave Earth early. It may have been
Early,
sickness, but
yes.
it could have been other things. And if the family wrapped everything in a shroud of silence, then you may never know what happened in that house. For real.
Correct.
You may never know
Right. And
what
I
he,
don't.
yeah, as we speak, we don't.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that that is an epicenter for a lot of trauma is the home. It's the
Yes.
parents, it's the mother. The
Yes.
abusiveness that the child experiences when they're young and they don't know how to work it out, and therefore they carry it as anger and everything else. And as I'm
Mm-hmm.
listening, I'm just wondering, and believe me, viewers, I am not a professional. I'm just an observer. I piece things together. I read, I
Mm-hmm.
study, and I'm involved in this phenomenal master class with Charles Winburn that has opened my eyes to so much trauma among children. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate it. But back to you, Angel. Uh, I shouldn't say I call you an angel because you are. You really are.
You've called me that twice,
I
and
know
I
that. You
think
better
it's,
listen. I think that may be what you're going to be doing. That whole thing about hovering over people and bringing healing and closure
and I
to
do that.
their life. And I yeah, because you send out that energy, and I do
But you're
love it.
not the only person that calls me that.
Really,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm very observant. Your spirit has been extremely kind. And so, which brings us forward to you gotten shot these 5 times. You
Yes.
back away the gun to your face. I don't know why people always
Yes.
want to shoot people in the face
Faith.
or disfigure your face. I mean,
Right.
that's just terrible. But so you get taken to the hospital. What happens to
Mm-hmm.
him? He gets arrested, Correct?
So actually, that night after he shot me, he ran out of the establishment and he was on the run for 9 days.
Okay.
And so the police, they harassed the family on a regular basis to get him to turn himself in. So 9 days later, after I've been in the hospital all this time, there was actually a policeman and a police dog that was at my door at the hospital. Considering that he had worked at that hospital, they had
Oh.
pictures of him plastered all through the hospital, and they had to move me around
Mm.
because there were so many people that knew him
Oh.
that people were trying to see me and, just have hearsay or, you know, just to see, okay, she's here, can you believe she's here? And it just creates talk. Um, and I was in there on an alias as well.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
so it was, that trauma continued, throughout that 9 days.
Mm.
However, he turned himself in and he went to jail.
Good.
And I will say, over a period of time, we ended up going to court. And he actually received 35 years in the Kentucky State Penitentiary,
35 years. Was the
where
judge, did it go to jury or was it just a judge?
it did. It went to jury. Um, I actually stood as a witness,
Okay.
and because the um, the prosecuting attorney did not want to take it to trial
I bet he didn't.
because what happens is the victim has to relive all of this
Mm-hmm.
over again,
Again.
and they
Mm-hmm.
do want to protect the victims. However, if you are able to have a voice, you should have the right to have a choice if you want to go through that or not.
Yes.
And I said, absolutely, I am going to trial. And they said, well, this could go either way. You just never know how these things come around or end up. And I said, I know what's going to happen. And I know that we need to go to trial. And sure enough, we went to trial. It lasted 2 days. And when we went to recess for the
Mm-hmm.
jurors to go back and make a decision as far as guilty or not,
Mm-hmm.
I believe they were gone for maybe 15 minutes and came back and
Wow.
found him guilty. The next day, they provided the sentencing, and it was within minutes they came back and provided the sentence of 35 years. Now,
What was his response?
well, I will say the first day in the trial, when I entered the courtroom, he became emotionally manic.
Mm.
And he was crying, he was standing up, he was pacing, and he made it all about him and not about me. So the judge actually excused him from court that
Oh.
the rest of that day. And the next day, the judge immediately told him, and in the beginning, he said, Sir, you will need to contain yourself and your emotions so that you can be a participant in this trial.
Mm.
And so he did. And as soon as he realized things weren't going in his favor, and it was longer than, say, 10, 15 years, he changed into a different person. He became frustrated and angry.
At
And
who? Who? At who?
exactly, at me.
Who? Ah,
Because originally it was my fault that he went to jail.
gosh. Hey.
Exactly.
Oh, listen. You won't believe this. My producer just came to the door and said, "Our time is up."
Oh no.
I I can't believe it. I
Oh no.
I want to conclude he got 35 years. Didn't
Yes.
he petition the court to have his sentence reduced or something like that?
Um, just recently, the end of last year, he petitioned the court to dismiss the DBO
Ah,
with prejudice,
ah,
um, so that I could never file a DVO motion to file a DVO against him again, because the DVO actually prevents him from earning any earned time with his
yep, yep,
behavior,
yep, yep.
etc. Um, but I will continue to go to court every 3 years to get that renewed as long as I'm alive.
Absolutely. And you told me that
Yes,
he clocked on the presiding judge and she
yes.
gave him more time.
Didn't give him more time, but did not allow him to speak any further.
Thank you.
Um, yes, because of his behavior. I mean, of course, they have to listen to what he has if he's filed. But there's only so much, that makes sense or doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm going to conclude on this note, and that is that this isn't over because I see you being critical and key in educating and empowering women. Now, I
Right.
didn't include other groups that are impacted. There are crazy women out here that beat up men too, but
Absolutely.
their numbers are much lower. There are
Hmm.
people within the gay lesbian community that experience horrible situations in the area of domestic violence. There are elderly
Correct.
people. There are children. It's all over the place. But to your credit, you have stayed the course. You have been a profound voice for those who have gone through this. And I would just simply say to you in conclusion of this second interview, when you told me that he clocked on the judge and she was a female, and I started
Yeah.
laughing hysterically because I said, "You are a fool, sir. You,
Yes.
you're going
Hmm.
to go crazy on the judge, who's a woman in Kentucky. Okay,
Hmm.
good luck with that." But I say to
Right.
your defense, stay the path, get the help you need. It's available
Absolutely.
today. And may all of the glass from the broken soul be removed and a pure, pure heart replaced. I would like to leave us on that note. You're an amazing woman. I love you. I feel it. I can't help but feel it. So I thank you for coming on and being open to sharing even some more. And just know that God is with you, girl.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he's with you.
He's always with
Yeah,
me.
yes. And he's going to be with you even more visibly in the days ahead. To my viewing audience, we've just concluded my second interview with this wonderful woman, April Ballentine. If you would like to get information on her and what you need to get to have her to come and speak, which I encourage, you can do that through the station. We have information that will help you to make that connection. And as always, I'm honored and privileged to have you as a part of my world and this discussion about breaking the silence. We've had enough, okay? I would like to see that happen. And I thank all of you all for listening in. And my prayer is that your day be a day of peace, happiness, and joy. You take care now. I'm Michelle Graves, and you have a great day. Bye-bye.